Recently, my group and I were looking for some new players to replace some others who had to leave our game due to work commitments. I included in my looking for player post that we are an 18 plus LGBTQ plus inclusive group and add some details about the campaign. The first person who responded had listed attack helicopter as if it was a personal pronoun. That's usually code for I'm a transphobic douche nozzle. But I thought naively, maybe this might be a trans person using it as an ironic joke. Bro, no! No, they're not! Don't let them in! Maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, LGBTQ plus was the first sentence of the post. They couldn't have missed it, right? Still, it's enough of an orange flag to warrant some Googling. So I put Chopper's Discord username, which was fairly unique, into Google, and there was a Reddit profile, u/Chopper, with no posts and no comments. Okay, weird, but it's not very interesting. A little further down Google was another Reddit profile, u/super secret different name. Super secret different name's profile had been posted and commented only in r/sex, r/hookups, r/swingers, r/blah blah blah. You get the idea. And every post across the last couple years has some variation on, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Oh, that's so much less bad than what I was expecting. Anyway, he wants a female to take his virginity. It was the saddest display I've ever seen of toxic masculine desperation, but why was this guy showing up on a search for Chopper? I clicked into one of the posts where u/super secret different name was giving out his Snapchat at Chopper. Yeah, I blocked and gone. I managed to get a group together. We were careful to find a group that really clicked, and now I can't think of a better bunch of players. Dude, don't make fun of the gays, because they will find you. They will find everything. You cannot run. You cannot hide. I want to begin by saying, I don't think poorly of anyone involved. Normally my friends and I can communicate our thoughts and feelings respectively and constructively and can come to a compromise if need be, so this argument was atypical of how we usually interact. I had permission from the other person to ask, am I the a-hole? The context goes all the way back to a Curse of Strahd campaign we played 4 years ago. At the end of session 1, the party was fleeing Death House through a cinematic skill challenge sequence, but my goblin failed 2 main skill checks and died. Between sessions, the DM and I discussed ways to bring my goblin character back through a dark resurrection, making a deal with some dark power. She was able to raise as an undead, without a heartbeat, cold to the touch, and the biggest drawback being that most healing spells don't work on undead creatures. And as the module itself states, anyone who makes a dark pact can never leave Barovia even if Strahd is defeated. Should they travel outside the border, they disappear into nothing. Upon disappearing or dying, their soul is forfeited to the dark power they made a deal with. This probably sounds unfair, and like a massive handicap, but let me tell ya, I was enthusiastically agreeing to all this and was very happy. See, I enjoy playing woobies, characters who are meant to be pathetic, oppressed, or mistreated by wider society.
You should never have come. You will be hated, reviled. Your name will be cursed. You will be spat upon. Yeah, well. Why are you interrupting me?
Oh, I was just gonna say, joke's on you. I'm into that shit.
What?
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah, I'm into that. What are you gonna do now? Huh? What are you gonna do to me? Yeah, cause I like it.
Typically, their story arc is about finding friendship, overcoming severe adversity, or becoming a martyr to protect the people they love. As the Curse of Strahd campaign progressed, the plan was to break the pact and reclaim my goblin's life and freedom. The DM and I even spoke privately about how to best achieve the story arc, and I appreciate that much effort went into it. Months later, towards the end of the campaign at the Amber Temple, the paladin of our group was tempted to make a dark pact of their own. But her deal was made so she could gain power rather than having another chance at living. In the following session at the Lich's Library, we find a lot of useful information about Strahd and deep lore bits. We also discovered a method to break dark pacts. However, the paladin was not privy to what the DM and I had planned. They interpreted this discovery as something they could use to avoid the consequences of her deal. Okay, seriously, who this paladin's god. Because as a manager, I'd be really disappointed with this paladin service performance. In effect, 2 characters had Dark Pact, but only one of us could use this method to break free. There were drawbacks to this solution, as the DM and I agreed something significant would need to be sacrificed for the sake of drama, and to show how committed my goblin was to regain her life and freedom. The method involves severing the connection a soul has to the weave of magic, thereby making it so my druid could no longer cast spells, wild shape, or be affected by magic. The paladin argued that if she severed her connection, she'd lose less than my character, as she was a half-caster and a warrior who could not be affected by magic. And that sounded cool. It sounds like a fighter, just saying. Between sessions, the DM, the paladin, and I privately spoke about how to handle this wrench in the story. Ultimately, it depended on who could survive the final fight. We had the 6-session-long grand finale battle against Strahd in Castle Ravenloft, running after the slippery vampire lord, killing all his wives. Dang. Wow. Y'all wanted him to have no bitches. We were being ambushed by hidden monsters and doing our best to contend with traps. From the chapel to the towers to the ballroom to the library to the vault down to the dungeon, and finally fighting in the crypts just outside Sergei's tomb. My goblin was separated from the group and knocked unconscious. Irina pulls my goblin into her lap and uses a healing potion on her. Strahd taunts my goblin and tries to make a deal with Irina. If she marries him, all of her friends can live. The last words my goblin spoke were that even if she died, Irina would be free. Strahd then murks my goblin by ripping out her heart with his claws. The party was able to defeat Strahd, but suffered a few more casualties, including the Warlock and NPC ally. With darkness lifted, the paladin was the only one still alive with a dark pact, and she used the method to sever her connection to the weave. It was a bittersweet ending, but the entire group was satisfied with how things played out, even if I didn't get a happy ending for my little goblin. She died protecting a woman she loved and set Irina free. We played several other modules together between the end of Curse of Strahd and now. The Paladin player and the Warlock player played with another group on a different day of the week. Whenever they and I were in voice chat, they liked to share stories about the exploits of this other group. Recently, they began a homebrew campaign, and the DM of that group agreed to let the Paladin player continue that character's story. They worked out a homebrew trait for her to be unaffected by magic, and she plays a fighter instead. A week ago, they were telling me about how the other DM had a god, the Lawbringer, remove this trait to make the fighter a paladin again. And I'll admit, I was pissed off. This set off a massive argument between the paladin player and me, and I was saying things like,
"That makes no sense. You were unaffected by magic. You can't just use magic to fix what was severed. You made the deal, so deal with the consequences. It must be nice to be so important that a law domain god would break the rules for you. My goblin druid did nothing wrong, yet she was screwed out of happiness and freedom. Your paladin makes a deal with an evil entity and steals my cure, but she is not an oathbreaker, nor does she lose her powers from falling. That is BS, and you know it. I will not tolerate this paladin's treason. I'll take this paladin's fanfiction and disprove it!"
ultimately, it does not matter, because I am not in the game with the Paladin player. I have never played with this other DM, nor is he the DM that even established the rules of breaking the pact. We both apologized to each other, and the last session we were in together went smoothly. It was just like normal. We chalked it up to just different character philosophies. I enjoy playing with high drama, and they enjoy the feeling of being powerful and heroic. So am I the a-hole for getting upset and starting an argument over this? Well, drum roll, please. Yes, the a-hole! Like, you're not a bad person, I get where you're coming from, but yeah, this is a pretty silly thing to get mad over. Like you said, this is not a game you're a part of, and this is an entirely other DM with an entirely different DMing philosophy. Like, it's okay for you to disagree. I disagree with the things other DMs and players do all the friggin' time. Like, watching Critical Role, I occasionally scream, "Matt, what the hell?" And by occasionally, I mean I do that all the time, but do I think Matt Mercer is a bad DM? Hell no. It's just, I make different calls than he does. On top of that, you're not getting mad at the DM, you're getting mad at the player. This is just none of your biz, alright? If she wants to continue her story, that's fine. If she wants to write an entire fanfiction where her paladin is the queen of the entire world, you can't stop her. That's her thing. The story might be problematic if you were part of the game, but you're not part of the game. If they're enjoying it, let them have their fun. I told my brother about sharing the GameStop incident, trademarked, with you, and it getting into an episode, so he suggested I send you his story. It's more of an IRL horror story, but D&D is, like, involved. Leo is my big brother. Jim is Leo's best friend to this day. We both think of him as, like, a third sibling. And Charlie is a pathological liar, and the problem... Damn. What's wrong with Charlie is such a nice name! I've never met a bad guy named Charlie. Like, ever. Bad guys are named like Randall or Isaac. Isaac's a good one. Leo, Jim, and Charlie had been gaming together for quite some time. Leo and Jim actually taught me, but I wasn't part of their group. Partly just differences in playstyle, but mostly Charlie creeped me out. But I digress. Leo had a sizable collection of books, which he lugged to Jim's or Charlie's place, almost daily in a big old duffel bag. It was referred to affectionately as the BBB, the Big Black Bag. Keep in mind, Jim and Charlie lived in the same apartment complex, but different buildings. It was just 3/4 of a mile from our house, and Leo was walking back and forth. He even carried the thing through a blizzard to just game with us. You know, I talk about dedication to games a lot, and D&D players out there, ask yourself, are you willing to be a true warrior of Skyrim hiking through the snow to play with your friends? Alright, because I guess that's the new standard, okay? After one particularly long session, Leo was grumbling about the hike home, and Charlie suggested he just leave the BBB there at his apartment since they were already planning to have another session the very next day. Leo was hesitant at first, but Jim helped him to see the logic of the idea. He finally agreed and came home. The next day, Leo went to Charlie's apartment, but nobody answered the door. He tried Jim's, and Jim hadn't seen him either. They hung out and played video games until Leo had to come home for a school night. After school the next day, Leo went to Jim's only to find him and Charlie standing outside talking. According to Charlie, he and his family hadn't been home the previous day because they were at the police station. The apartment had been broken into, and several items were stolen, including the big black bag of books. To say Leo was crushed was an understatement. He bought most of those books himself. Time passed, and Leo and Charlie had a falling out. I don't recall over what exactly, but about a week afterwards, Jim told Leo at school that he had to come over afterwards. It turns out, Charlie had approached Jim saying he'd gotten some used books from a friend and offered to sell them to Jim, and it was the big black bag. The dumb sob hadn't even thought to switch them to a different bag. It turns out the whole break-in was a complete fabrication, literally a plot from Community.
Oh my god, you guys, we've been robbed!
Oh man, I can't believe we got robbed.
Charlie left the big black bag at Jim's house when he threatened to get the real cops involved. TLDR, idiot claims break-in to steal my brother's D&D books and then tries to sell them to my brother's best friend. Thanks for reading, and thanks for having an awesome YouTube channel. Thanks to you for watching, dude. Man, is this the dumbest problem player we've ever met? Stealing the books is one thing, right? Like, that plot actually went pretty well. I mean, if these people talked to Charlie's parents for even 5 seconds, the plot probably would have been exposed, but okay, just ignoring that, it was going okay from a theft perspective. However, trying to sell the books to the guy's best friend, still wrapped in the bag they were originally stolen in? Are you kidding me? What did you think was going to happen? Honestly, just amateur work. I'm offended. Anyway, amateur theft aside, don't try to steal things from your dungeon master, okay? They're working really hard to make this game fun for you, so try to make their lives easier, not harder. I found this party out of the D&D official state-endorsed Discord. The second one in a month. I guess it's happening now. The server owner seemed like a really cool guy. I still think he is. He's not actually the problem here. And I was the forever DM at my table and had been looking for a chance to play as a player character, so I was eagerly joining this one. It was his first time DMing, and he didn't have much experience with D&D in the first place, so he'd ask me for input and often for help. I've been playing for 12 years as both a DM and a player, and I was more than happy to help. We start off with the Dungeon Master, who's also the Warlock, the Bard, who's also the server owner, Barbarian Monk, and several other players who joined the campaign and left after only one session, as well as myself, the Rogue. Originally, the server owner was the Dungeon Master. It was meant to be a one-shot so we could gauge how to DM, balance encounters, etc., which is fine in my opinion. and the first session was fun, if a bit imbalanced. It was 4 level 1 characters fighting like 8 giant rats, and the server owner's dice were definitely on his side. It didn't help that RNGesus hexed our barbarian, so he could barely get any hits in, but such is the nature of Dungeons & Dragons. 2 of our party members were downed. My rogue went and confronted the person that contracted them in the first place and shook him down for some scrolls of Revivify. Do people just have those in their pockets? Actually, in Baldur's Gate 3, they do. Huh. Problem solved. Everyone was back up, and the owner got some experience with running combats. We closed out the session there. I learned later that the Warlock had pulled the owner aside to tell him that he did a horrible job running the session. Warlock is also an experienced player, as she made effort to remind everyone. So she went in on the owner. He eventually just offered her the DM spot, which she decided to take, of course. This is when Warlock started getting on to everybody about my pronouns. I am non-binary / gender fluid, and I was playing a female character. I don't mind people calling me she, as I realize I sound feminine, and I was playing a feminine character, so no harm, no foul. My pronouns just aren't super important to me. She started only referring to me as he, him, and getting onto anyone that called me they or she, even on days when I told her I didn't want to be called he, him. Again, my pronouns have just not bothered me too much, so I didn't think anything of it. It only started to bother me when she was shaming other people for quote-unquote misgendering me. Next session rolls around, and we return to the scene with our characters recovering from the fight, and still shaking down the contractor. He was the owner of this tavern that never got on foot traffic on account of the infestation in his basement, which is what he hired us for. The reason my rogue got in his face right off the bat was because he had locked us in the basement and was surprised that we'd made it out, telling us to our face that he expected us to die. My chaotic neutral character decided she wanted to kill this pub owner. Everyone else was on board, so she had the Warlock, who was a mimic homebrew race. See, that's how you can identify the epitome of evil. Who wants to play as a freaking mimic, you monster? Then, Wizard and Monk were introduced. They saw the pub, and they were lost, so they came inside to ask for help. My rogue had the highest charisma in the party. I was going for like the swashbuckler thing, and I liked role-playing, so my character started telling the 2 strangers that the pub was hers. They believed her, and she told them that she would like to hire them to help them clear out the basement. They agreed, and everyone headed down as a party. The rest of the encounters were normal, to be expected. The last one caused my character to flee and leave the combat to everyone else, as it was a giant spider. She had arachnophobia, but otherwise, nothing noteworthy or weird. It started getting weird come session 3. At the start of session 3, the party heads back to the stairs to see that the entire pub has been suddenly renovated. The Warlock, now a DMPC, had stayed upstairs and apparently shifted to look like a Warforged. I don't know how that works, but I didn't want to say anything. The entire space had just been totally renovated. The upstairs had been completely blocked off from the general public and turned into a now magic space. Now everyone had magic keys, and there was a map that the DM would not shut up about. She kept pushing us to investigate it and explaining in extensive detail what this map looked like. I'm a fan of detailed storytelling, don't get me wrong, but it got to a point where she was focusing on this map for an hour.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
Crispy number 9? Is everything okay? You've been staring at that map for like an hour. You're getting kind of sweaty. When nobody seemed as excited about it as she was to talk about it, she started rolling for people and taking player agency away, telling us the bard is going to investigate the map. Things like that. This just became a very common theme. The DM continued to roll for people. Most of the players were newer, but DM, rather than explaining how D&D Beyond worked, would just do everything for them. Wizard never came back to a session as DM kept rolling for him, telling him what his character did, etc. And I don't blame him. I also noticed that Bard started going quiet, so I went to check on him. He was getting extremely frustrated with DM for essentially revoking his player agency as well. It was then that I realized that for all the detailed descriptions and storyboarding the DM did and had done, there wasn't really a story or a quest for us to do. So I had to essentially take it upon myself to find one. My character brought up that she wanted to find her mom, so it was put to a vote amongst the party. Nobody really had any other ideas, so everyone agreed. I made it exceptionally clear, both in voice chat and in text chat, that I did not want my rogue to end up being a main character or a focal point. I didn't want her to be in charge. None of that.
Sometimes foreshadowing is
Which, of course, most of the party respected, except the DM. Her Warlock was now an NPC who would still do combat, but was with the party 98% of the time, so pretty much nothing changed. This Warlock was also now my butler and servant. My character had a noble background, but she hated that fact. Hated nobility, authority, etc. So she was not a fan of this. Going forward, DM would refer to my character as the leader on multiple occasions, saying the guards approached my character to talk to the party because she looked like she was in charge, despite the fact that she was much smaller than over half the party, being a half-elf, whereas the barbarian was a frost giant. Wait, hold on! You got elf, human, dwarf, and a 20-foot-tall giant? How do you even travel? My rogue had sticky fingers, as all rogues do, and liked going around town making coin purses lighter. However, it seemed like I never got a chance to do that without someone, somehow, seeing her. Even when I rolled high, I always got the, you feel eyes on you, though you're not sure from where. We got in trouble with a thieves guild in a couple towns as a result, and in combat, these rogues were maybe CR2 maximum, which brought into question how they were catching my level 3 rogue with a 27 on stealth and a 30 for sleight of hand. The numbers weren't adding up, but by this point, the DM had also started rolling for me. I guess she thought I was taking too long, but it was constant. Every single time I had to roll, she would tell me to roll and then roll for me and ignore my results. The game started turning into story time with the Dungeon Master, while I was a guest star with a Scottish accent. And the party are all the underpaid crew on the side who don't get paid. Now this is the point where I will tell you that the DM had started talking to me in private messages, asking about my personal life, asking about my partner, etc., and making extremely inappropriate and uncomfortable comments about mine and my partner's sex life. I never know how to handle those sort of things, so I'm always civil in response, and maybe I shouldn't be. I am still part of this table, however. With my work schedule changing, the dread killer of campaigns might finally free me from feeling obligated to join sessions. Everyone else is great and I love playing with them, but I just don't feel like I have any agency and my creativity is stifled. It's such a bummer too, because I really love my character and put a fair bit of effort into her backstory. So, TLDR, the DM revoked player agency and basically turned the game into story time with Warlock, and then proceeded to make sexual and uncomfortable comments toward the only other quote-unquote female at the table, which is hilarious considering the DM constantly wants to refer to you as male. I am all for standing up for the other people at your table. Look, we see so many DMs and players out there who are completely complacent when someone's being racist or sexist, and that sucks. It sucks to feel like you're alone when nobody's backing you up. I hope more people grow comfortable with standing up to BS at the table. But in this case, dude, this person is telling you that it's okay, that they're gender fluid. So, you should respect that. This person is using the writer as a way to get upset at the other party members, which is just... it's terrible, dude. Don't do that. Besides that, the way they treated the original DM is terrible, and the way they DM'd was pretty bad too. I think this is someone who has DM'd before and is way too overconfident about their abilities. Just the way they critique the original DM kind of gives me that vibe, and the mistakes they make are mistakes I see in DMs who have grown a little bit complacent in their own skill, like giving too much focus to one player character or including unwanted NPCs. The worst thing is rolling for everyone, though. I mean, seriously, it's one of the only tactile things people do at a table. If you're gonna remove that, then remove so much of the fun. Hello! This campaign was my first ever time playing D&D, and was almost my last. So this story starts with me as a monk, 2 paladins, a barbarian, a cleric, and I believe a rogue. I'm not using their names because, to be honest, we didn't really know each other's names, even after session 0, which was not even really a session. So the campaign was an academy game, and the Dungeon Master wanted us to start at level 1. This is important, since half of us don't really have much of our abilities. So the session was basically us getting to the school and being kidnapped by the bus driver. One of our paladins flew out of the window because of this. After this session, I don't know if I should even count it as that, but after that we had what was supposed to be our first session. 2 people were just not available. We still wanted to play, but our Dungeon Master just didn't. We tried to encourage him, saying that he could play a character since He has our sheets, but he refused, left the call, as the rest of us were just upset and disappointed. And honestly, I kind of get that from the DM. I don't always want to play as another player character. In fact, I never want to play as another player character while I'm DMing. It's just too much stress, man. From the time after our next and last session, the paladin that flew out the window just left the server. We didn't even notice until a day before the actual game, but we took it as a warning that we should have too. So we came around to the actual session 1. It started off well. We knew that combat was going to happen and we were ready for it, but that was the problem. Out of the gate, my character went from full health to half before we even rolled initiative. We all took damage, but everyone else took half damage, while I took the full brunt. The fight starts, and all of us realized the people we were up against were higher level than us. We later found out that they were level like 5 or 6. Again, we're level 1. We did manage to down 2 people, with me going down once but being healed up, but there were still 2 more people up and at full, so our cleric decided to cast Fairy Fire on them, which also hit our barb, who said it was fine. Bro, you're facing off against things that are way beyond Fairy Fire ain't gonna save you. We did not manage to kill these 2 people, and DM rolled for Hellish Rebuke on our cleric. It did 18 damage, more than their hit points, killing them. Wait, what? Yep, not passing the sniff test. You need a 4th level Hellish Rebuke to deal that much damage on average. So unless the DM is rolling like an absolute god, BS! We were all shocked, and I want to say the DM said multiple times he didn't want to kill us. And I would like to say that, oh, he was sorry, but he wasn't. He did not care one bit after killing a character we spent 2 weeks making together as a group. Our cleric was also a brand new player and was absolutely devastated, but we were trying to play it off. Me and 2 others tried to keep going, but we felt awful. It was unbalanced, like we were supposed to die, and it was a miracle that only one of us did at this point. Nobody wanted to say anything, so we made a different server without him and left that one after telling DM why, and we were very respectful about it. Their DM's response? Well, of course, it was to call the 2 new players that hadn't blocked him and tell them that they're overreacting over a death and that we didn't know how to have fun.
I just don't know why my players would do this to me.
Hey, if we're gonna diagnose, what's wrong with your problem players, you gotta tell me what the problem is.
They're not having fun!
Okay, I got even more questions. Is there any reason why they might not be having fun?
Try having fun now! Try having fun now!
No, I can't think of anything. I have no idea.
Thankfully, there was a GM in the group who is now taking over and started an academy game for us after this horrible experience, where we actually have all of our abilities. It's just really disappointed us all, since we had been looking for this since the beginning, and it was all ruined on our first session, and most of us aren't going to be playing the characters from that campaign. TLDR, the DM killed off a player in session 1 and said we were overreacting after we told him that we were upset and left. You know why we're ending it on this one? We're ending it on this one because this is a good way to handle a bad dungeon master. Look, I've always said this. Problem DMs are way worse than problem players. At least with problem players, it's pretty easy to just kick them out, but the DM is the guy who's running the game. And sometimes, you can kind of get gaslighted into feeling like you're the only person with problems. That's why I think it's so important for DMs to ask for feedback every single session, just to make sure that you let your players know, look, you can tell me things. But this DM doesn't want to be criticized, doesn't want any of that. This DM just seems like they want something, well, honestly, I don't even know what they want. I don't know if I'm getting the vibe of a DM versus player mentality. I mean, unbalanced combat usually implies that, but it's also possible the DM just kind of sucks at balancing the game. They want a hardcore game, but I'm going to come out and say it, those are harder to run. They require more skill. Skill this DM just doesn't have. Hey, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, you might enjoy a previous episode on somebody who wanted to make the gays illegal in his homebrew. It's linked in the cards, at the end, and in the description. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. Girl, it's okay to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.
Yeah, well.